Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Vox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullroot.
Hello and welcome to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, presented to you by Vox DFS and the Vox DFS Firelines. I am Justin. Joining with me, as always, my brother Ryan.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And we are the hosts for the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. Welcome to our Infirmary show. There are over 19, count them, 19 injuries that we're going to cover that have fantasy football relevance. It was not a pretty day for any fantasy football owner. If you got out of this weekend not having a single injury on your roster, count your blessings and you're probably going to win. So
yeah, I had injuries all over. I had a couple from last week as well. I had a bunch from this one, but none of my injuries were starting running backs. They were all my backup, kind of my 2-3 flex guys, and so all my flex guys failed this week, and so I went 0-5.
What I liked was a lot of these starters, specifically Doug Martin. I was a big Sims fan. I had him sitting on my bench, just waiting for Doug Martin.
No,
Not
next
that I'm
week,
rooting for that, but
next week we probably get to start him.
Yeah, I just it's one of those things. I had the feeling that I didn't think he was going to stay healthy all year long. I still, and once again, Thomas Rawls not healthy. But before we get too far into it, let's just actually get into the names, starting. With the Seahawks, kind of Thomas Rawls and the leg contusion. I know that a lot of people were expecting a lot more from him when he was declared the starter. Tell me what your thoughts were really quickly, because we've got a lot of injuries to get to.
You want my injury thoughts or just the thoughts on his
Just
game?
your thoughts. I know Christian Michael had a good game outside of the fumble. If people ignore that stat, he had an incredible game against a very, very tough defense.
Yeah, the offense just couldn't get going. It doesn't, let's be honest, it doesn't. While our offensive line is still learning to gel, the Seahawks are, have always been a second half team. So, they'll get the right combo going on that offensive line. Wilson's not fully healthy after having his ankle rolled and stepped on in the previous week. He couldn't hardly run. So, as far as Rawls' injury is concerned, I'm not too concerned about it. He was in and out. We'll kind of see how it is. It had nothing to do with his ankle, so I'm hesitantly optimistic as of right now. Right now, I'd still be leaning towards Christian Michael. So
yeah, Danny Woodhead. Sad news for Danny Woodhead, out for the season. I know he was one of your favorites. This makes Melvin Gordon all the more relevant. I know that we really liked Woodhead for those passing downs, and I know a lot of people were trying to tell people to sell Melvin Gordon high early. I really hope that wasn't you, because now it's going to come back to bite you, and you're going to make that guy you traded with look like a genius. But with Woodhead out, look for Melvin Gordon to get a whole lot more from the passing game. This just makes Antonio Gates look better, because there's now even less passing options that Phillip Rivers is going to.
at least out in the flats. With Keenan Allen going out in week 1, you were expecting, Danny Woodhead's going to get a boost for week 2, and then he goes out with the torn ACL. So now we're getting through the massive amount of injuries, the same kind of thing the Chargers went through last week, except this time they're 1-1 now? Yeah, so they're in a little bit better shape than they were last week.
Yeah.
One thing to look at with Woodhead going down and Keenan Allen going down, there are guys to pick up, which we'll actually talk about later. If you have Travis Benjamin, I know he's pretty well owned. He's already got a boost. I know a bunch of DFS lineups that had him in their lineups that got big money out of him. So Benjamin's going to get a boost. Gates is going to get a boost now because, and we'll kind of see. I think maybe Brandon Oliver may get a little bit of that passing down action a little bit. But I have Melvin Gordon in one of my money leagues. And so I'm very happy to be owning him. So
Yes. Moving on to something that should surprise nobody. Arian Foster is day-to-day with a groin injury. So
really? What?
Yeah.
No, not him.
He got himself hurt again. But this is a situation where I am avoiding all running backs for Miami like the plague because there's just too many other options out there. Arian Foster injured. Jay Ajayi did not look good at all, and there's too much there unproven. I think you bank on receivers like Devontae Parker.
Who showed up and had a pretty good game in his own right.
Yes, he did after being out for week 1. Showed up tremendously in week 2. So I would stick with receivers there, and I'd avoid any running back with a Dolphins jersey.
Well, a name to keep an eye on, Kenyon Drake. Maybe don't pick him up unless you have an extremely deep bench and have the room and have injuries to get rid of.
Or you're in a huge league and need somebody.
Kenyon Drake, they drafted him for a reason. Arian Foster, he was running the ball, but he was doing a lot of catching out of the backfield. That's Kenyon Drake's specialty. That's what he was doing with, I believe he was the number 2 behind Derrick Henry at Alabama. When Derrick Henry was mowing over everyone, Kenyon Drake was the lightning, catching the passes outside. So they spend a draft pick on him for a reason. If you don't pick him up and don't have the room for him, at least put him on your watch list.
Yeah, Amir Abdullah left the game, was seen in a walking boot. There are reports that Dwayne Washington will kind of absorb his role. I know the coach was talking about how Dwayne Washington can do things dynamically different than even Amir Abdullah can, and even Theo Riddick.
Well, is
he worth the pickup?
The reason for that is Dwayne Washington is 6'1", 233 pounds. The guy is just a bulldozer. He actually basically took over Zach Zenner's role. I mean, Zach Zenner's at this rate getting probably going to be cut. And he was a favorite of mine to be, kind of to watch on the watch list, and in case Amir Abdullah got hurt, because of how well he performed last preseason, even in his opportunities in the season. So Dwayne Washington, if you've got a deep bench, even if you don't, if you had, say, a Danny Woodhead injury and there's no other options that you can use, I would use Dwayne Washington. He's only owned in like 1% of leagues, and so he's, especially in a standard league, I think that would be a nice option for some touchdowns. So.
Okay, and moving on to Doug Martin with the hamstring injury. He is listed as day-to-day. There's nothing really serious. There will probably be an update by the time that this recording hits the podcast tomorrow morning. But we mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show. Sims is obviously the next man up. The thing that I am concerned about is Sims did not get much production this last week in the game after Doug Martin went out. They kind of just got blown out, for lack of a better term. Do you think that this next week that Chris Sims is going to have a better game just because if he's the starter, he'll know from the get-go? Or do you think that even matters?
I don't know. It may be better. I don't have in front of me right now their matchup, who they're playing next week. They ran into a buzz on Arizona. Arizona just kind of mowed them over. They had no choice but to try to throw some deeper passes to try to get back in the game. So
they do play the Rams next week,
which the Rams are going to do a better job. I think the Rams. Let's be honest. The Rams played really well against the Seahawks because they always play well against the Seahawks.
Yeah,
it's a division rivalry that always happens. Plus, it was their first home game in LA since 94, 93, something like that. So there was a major emotional high going for them.
And they only scored 9 points.
And they only scored 9 points. It was again going back to the Seahawks game. It was a lack of offensive line and Russell Wilson's lack of movement. So getting back to Sims, I still like him if he's the starter. I still like that matchup. The defense can still get to, I'm sure can still get to Winston, but I think if it's Sims, I'd be willing to start him as a flex or an RB, maybe even an RB2.
Up next, the one that everyone's talking about, Adrian Peterson. The injury, when it first came out, looked like an ankle. Reports are now that it's a knee. After a little bit more investigation today, it looks like it's a torn meniscus. There are rumors that he could be ready in a week or two. I think that is way too early. I think he's going to be out for a while. With his injury history in the past, they need to put him on the back burner for a little while. They've played really, really well in the first 2 weeks. They really need to hit him.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what's going on. The report I saw said that he could possibly play. However, if he were to have it partially repaired, he would be out 4 weeks. If you were to have it completely repaired, he would be out 4 months.
Yeah.
So there are 2 options to go with. There's Jerick McKinnon and Matt Asiata. Matt Asiata is going to be probably your more surefire standard league. He's going to vulture the touchdowns. They're going to use Jerick McKinnon like they did 2 years ago when Adrian Peterson got suspended. The way that they used those two is they used Jerick McKinnon until they got to the red zone or even got to the goal line, and then Matt Asiata was the one running them in. And Asiata, I think, finished as the running back 12 in 2014 or 13 or 14, even in PPR leagues, simply because he kept scoring touchdowns because he kept getting used in the red zone. So I think Bradford let's be honest, he looked really good with Minnesota. He clicked with them really well. I think he could be good for them with the way they run their offense. It'll be interesting to see how that happens now with Peterson out. But, I think McKinnon is a good one to hold on to kind of see how he goes, especially in PPR leagues. Asiata, he's going to be the standard league pickup, and he's going to be the guy that not as many people are going to go after. So if you're looking to save, if you're dealing in a fab system where you have to bid on your, blind bidding on your free agents, I think Asiata would be a good one to, if you want to save a little bit of fab cash, that would be the way to go.
Julio Jones, ankle injury. I don't think this is anything really new because
this is nothing.
He's got apparently cankles and bad ankles and all sorts of ankle issues. Either that or they just talking about it. Just want to move on to the next one. I know when we were watching Thursday Night Football, you and I both thought that Brandon Marshall's 2016 fantasy football life was over.
No, I thought his football life was over. I thought at that point he was like us with headphones and a microphone. And he even said that his knee went numb, and that he figured he was going to be fishing from that point on. So
yeah, it looked bad.
It was horrible.
It apparently was not as bad as it looked because he continued to play.
Came back out. So
this is something I think you need to monitor. This is one of the reasons why I have one of the pickups that I have this week, because Marshall, that knee I'm not 100% on, just because the way that thing bent. Yeah, that just didn't look good. And
not at all.
He needed to play on it. Like, he didn't go and sit and rest. He ran back out there.
Well, I think it was
props for his courage and his grit, but good Lord.
I think it goes a little bit back to the same thing as in week 1 when it was Russell with his ankle. He normally sits down with the coaches after he gets injured. He stayed walking the entire day to keep the blood flow going, to keep the blood from sitting and swelling. So I think that's part of what was going on with Marshall, is he kept walking to kind of keep it from getting too swollen, and kept playing on it. So yeah, he's I think what is he right now? Is he still day to day? It's possible that he'll miss next week.
I don't think he'll miss next week, just because they have 10 days. I mean, he's been resting since Thursday, and then he doesn't play again until Sunday. So I think with him still having, by the time this recording hits, he's got 5 more days. I think he should be fine. I wouldn't be too concerned about his start-sit. I would be a little nervous about him year-long. But once again, in fantasy football, you got to play week to week.
Yep.
Moving on, Tyler Lockett did leave the field with an injury but came back on, so it's not anything too serious. Dante Moncrief did leave with a shoulder. He got his bell rung, and a lot of people thought that he was going to be under a concussion.
Yeah.
I think they did review and do the concussion protocol on him, but his shoulder may be keeping him out maybe a week, maybe a little bit longer. I haven't heard any update yet as of this point.
Because I think I got Moncrief in 3 or 4 leagues. So
yeah, so I know he was a high pick for a lot of people, kind of a round 4, very, very good value at the round 4 spot. This, I believe, does add a little bit more value to the rest of the receivers and the tight ends, maybe even Doyle if they're going to run their 2 tight end set.
It gives Dwayne Allen. Dwayne Allen, I think, is the one who benefit well in terms of red zone. I think he benefits the most. If Dante Moncrief is out, I mean, Philip Dorsett was the number 2 receiver. He's going to get a lot more playing time. He's going to get a lot more active. So.
And then Doug Baldwin had an MRI. That came back negative. I don't expect Doug Baldwin to miss the next game, but it is something. It may affect his production. I still think there's a number of injuries along the Seattle offense, with Russell Wilson being hurt, Tyler Lockett being banged up. Now Doug Baldwin backed up. The offensive line is shambles. As a Seahawks fan, I'm nervous about that, but I still am not sold on San Francisco, although they did throw up a lot of points against Carolina, but I think Carolina had scrubs in there the rest of the game. And
yeah, I mean, Carolina all last year, how many games did they build up this huge lead? Yeah, they outscored everyone by a ton. But how many times did they have a game that was decided by 7 to 10 points when after at one point they were up by 20?
Yeah,
and gave up 2 to 3 touchdowns to let the other team back into it. They even did it in the conference semifinals against the Seahawks. The Seahawks were down 24-0 going into halftime, and they came back and almost tied it up. So,
yeah, what drives me nuts is Carolina's defense will score a lot of fantasy points, but they'll give up 35 points, which to me drives me insane. I mean, this last week they give up 27 points and they scored 14 points. Because of 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery and a touchdown. So that just drives me insane from a personal perspective. But their defense is going to give up points. They're just going to get some turnovers.
They'll get a lot of turnovers. So
yeah. Moving on to the revolving door that is the quarterback position in Ohio. Josh McCown came in and lit it on fire in the first quarter with a couple of hookups to Corey Coleman, and then left the game with a shoulder injury. Indication they're not going to be throwing him on the IR.
Nope.
So they're not looking to rule him out for 6 weeks. They're going to be bringing him back at some point this season, but this does more damage to me. This really affects Coleman, Pryor, Gordon when he comes back. The only one that does not affect, in my opinion, is Crowell, because he's the running back, and they're going to be doing a lot of handoffs. So
here's the problem now. Because they're at this point they've got Cody Kessler now as their starting quarterback. They've signed Charlie Whitehurst, who can't even get the ball 5 yards down the field. They've signed him to be the backup. It looks like it looks like they're going to start Kessler. they're gonna stack the box and force Kessler to beat him. So this could really after 2 great games from Isaiah Crowell, this could make things a little bit tough on him. So who knows? Maybe Duke Johnson gets a little bit of a boost with dump offs, but I think this really Josh McCown, like I said it last week, Josh McCown was going to give everyone in the Cleveland offense a boost. He did. Corey Coleman, Isaiah Crowell, and then he went out, and then everything fell flat again. So, I think for now you hold off. You maybe start Crowell as a flex play.
Yep.
If you feel confident enough, maybe throw him as a running back too. But for now, go ahead and I think you've got to sit a lot of those Cleveland players until McCown comes back. And once McCown comes back, then you should be go ahead and roll some of them out. So.
Here's a question that I just thought of. I know we didn't cover it before the show. Is this something to where you look at offloading Gary Barnidge because of his position, or do you try and pick up a waiver wire tight end? I know you and I like to stream, but Barnidge is one of those that you can start week in, week out because of his production. Is this something to where you need to look at getting a replacement for Barnidge, or do you think Kessler a lot of brand new quarterbacks like the checkdowns and like to hit their tight ends? Does that still make Barnidge relevant? I mean, it's Cody Kessler. There's no way to really know, but
yeah. So I think for now you hold on to Barnidge if he's your main starter, unless you have Barnidge and I don't know, like Martellus Bennett with Rob Gronkowski still not knowing what he's doing. If you've got Barnidge and he's your only tight end option, go ahead and throw him out there one more week. I think with how often, again, like you said, young quarterbacks throw to their tight ends as a safety valve, there could be a lot of passes to Barnidge over the next couple weeks.
Moving on to another quarterback that got injured, Jimmy Garoppolo was doing wonders with Martellus Bennett.
Seriously, you may not have been a believer, but a believer in Garoppolo, but the guy was getting it done. So
he was getting it done. He was getting it done to Martellus Bennett, who they decided to finally throw the ball to rather than just let him block like in Week 1 against Arizona. So I think this does. I think that proves that Bennett is an option. The problem is with now Garoppolo down, and with Brady still not able to play for 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
What's New England going to do here? Because talking with one kind of crazy coworker who's a diehard Patriots fan, he's like, they should just go out there, put every scrub out there, and just lose the next 2 weeks, and then just come back healthy. That is not my opinion, by the way.
So here's the way it goes. For now, they're probably going to go with, was it Bissett? Is that who their number 3 is? They finished the game. Played
I'll look that up.
Played 2+ quarters. Didn't do terrible. At this point they may just stick with running the ball with LeGarrette Blount. Because here's their next. I believe their next game is Thursday night. I think it's the Thursday night game against Houston is their next game.
That's not going to be pretty at all.
And here's the deal. So one of the Vox guys asked me about this. What do I think about Blount going into this next game? Are they going to be passing the ball around? Blount passing. Sorry, off topic. Passing the Blount.
We're in Washington. We can make that joke legally.
We can make that joke, and it's legal. We can, So here's the deal. With Blount, I think they run the ball. Blount's been running the ball effectively, even against teams that are okay against defending the run. He ran pretty effectively against Arizona, who last year was top 5 defense and pretty good against the run. So I think they keep running the ball with Blount. I think Blount maybe gets 25, 30 touches in this next game. They maybe key White in there a little bit for dump offs and let Bissett keep throwing the ball to Martellus Bennett. I mean, a lot of the times they set up their run game as short throws, which they're going to have to if they don't want their number 3 quarterback to get killed by J.J. Watt.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to be running the ball as much as possible or quick passes. Otherwise, they're going to be looking for week 4. They're going to be looking for 2 quarterbacks. So.
Yeah. Once again, another quarterback, Andy Dalton, was seen limping heavily in the locker room. I think this is more noise than news. But personally, I wouldn't start him next week. They're going to play Denver, who's a very stout defense. And I don't like playing any quarterback that's going up against Denver, regardless of their name, even if it is Luck. I didn't start him this week playing Denver. It's just Denver's really good. And if Dalton is banged up at all, I wouldn't trust it whatsoever. Plus, there's been not a lot of consistency. Granted, we're only 2 weeks in. There's not been a lot of consistency from any position there on the offense. So, obviously, you still start Green because he's A.J. Green. But with Andy Dalton, does this concern you at all, or do you believe that this is just noise?
I believe it's more just noise. Looking at what Gio Bernard did last week against a pretty tough defense, or at least a team that's played tough defense in Pittsburgh, they seem to have improved their pass defense over last year. Last year, they were one of the worst in the league in pass defense. So I think they've made some improvements on their defense. So I think, who knows? I think Gio Bernard gets a boost. I think the Andy Dalton thing is noise, but Gio gets a boost going up against the Denver defense. His dump off. So I think last week he had 100 yards on my bench. So
yeah, one thing to say really quickly to get off injuries for 1 second. Anybody going up against the Steelers defense, stream the tight end and the running back in the check down positions, because what I have seen a lot specifically in the Redskins game was what they're running is a very, very prevent style of defense. They're not going to let you beat them deep. They're going to make you dink and dump underneath. You may get a lot of yards, but you're probably not going to get a lot of points because it's what they were doing in Washington. It's what they did this last week, which is why Gio had a great game. Check downs, bumping it off. That's why you saw A.J. Green take a massive hit in his production value. And that's my opinion. If you're going up against Pittsburgh, stream that running back, tight end, check down position. Moving back into the injuries, Virgil Green was seen in a walking boot. This was after the game. So once again, I think this is kind of like the Andy Dalton thing. It's not something that I would be too worried or concerned about, but it is something to monitor.
Again, Virgil Green's more of a streaming option anyways. I think he's only on 20 to 30% leagues. So it's not a big deal at this point.
Yeah, I like him because the tight end position in that scheme does get targets. But I think that's something that will produce more as the year goes on. Rashard Jennings was seen with kind of a soft cast on his hand. That's something that people are getting a little nervous about. Do you think that Shane Vereen is the person to pick up here? I like him. He got more touches than anybody else in that game once Jennings went out. Tell me a little bit about what you think.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I think their number 2 in terms of running is Orleans Darkwa, who's not much of an option.
No.
If Rashad Jennings isn't in there, I see them doing a little more passing. So Shane Vereen may get a little bit of a boost. I don't think they're going to use him as much running the ball. They may try passing, dumping off a little bit more. So they can have a potent offense throwing the ball. They haven't really shown it too much yet. I think Vereen gets a little bump. Maybe watch for Orleans Darkwa, or maybe see how they're doing next week. But for now, just kind of watch Rashad Jennings. I don't think it's too serious yet.
Sammy Watkins, once again, with the foot. I think this is going to be the never-ending story of the rest of this season, at least the never-ending story for the next 4 to 5 weeks. He did play a little, but this is one of those things that I think if he continues to do this, I'm going to continue to play on it. It's never going to get better, and he's going to continue to do this random little insignificant production that he's been doing in the first couple of weeks. I wouldn't be playing him currently until they either let him rest or he has had a good game. I'd sit him on my bench or flex him at the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I said, called it. This is what, again, we started off the last podcast, do you start Sammy Watkins on Thursday? I said no. This is why the foot was a problem all through training camp. This is why I didn't draft him in any league. This is going to cause an issue all season unless they sit him and rest him. Every year, the last 2 years, he has had injury problems and didn't take off until the second half of the season. So I want to avoid that headache. You got to play week to week. That's not something I want to deal with. So if I've got injury issues, most of the leagues I play in don't have IR spots. So I don't want that sitting on my bench. Really, I'd put him on your bench if you can get something for him. I doubt you'll get much. If you can get someone foolish enough to take a big enough, to give you enough for him, go ahead and trade him. I don't want to deal with Sammy Watkins. I avoided the issue all throughout all my drafts, not going there.
Not on a single one of my teams either for the same reason. And so moving on, just an injury that happened tonight, Jay Cutler. This is more relevant for those of you who are in much deeper leagues or those who stream. Jay Cutler left with a hand injury. This affects – I'm bringing this up more because this affects more of the Alshon Jeffrey. Eddie Royal had a good game tonight.
It affects Jeremy Langford too.
Yeah, this affects them. This is more about them than it is about Jay Cutler. There's no indication yet. I know in the post-game press conference, he knew that he was done for the day as soon as that happened. And so when a quarterback knows that, he's going to be out at least a week. This is something that will affect the next game. Once again, no reports as of yet when this recording will be released. And so do you have any other points that you want to add in there about the potential effect to the other players?
Well, they've got Brian Hoyer. So if you're going up against a weak enough defense, that may give a little bit of a boost to Alshon Jeffrey because Hoyer's against the game.
Yeah, Hoyer did produce last year with the Texans. His what I'd be concerned about is what's between the ears with regards to his football decision making. But he is talented, can throw the deep ball.
He's got an arm. It's not incredibly accurate. So if he can get the ball towards Alshon Jeffrey can bring down the jump ball.
Yep.
Let's be honest, he's not a DeAndre Hopkins. He doesn't have quite the same athletic ability. He is an athletic freak. I don't think he quite has the same ability as DeAndre Hopkins. So I think Alshon Jeffrey shouldn't suffer too much. He may suffer a little bit from this.
Yeah.
Again, I think teams may stack the box more against Jeremy Langford, who's still struggling a little bit.
Which we both saw. Which we both saw coming.
Yeah. So they may still stack the box against Langford and try to force Hoyer to beat him.
Last one to touch. I think this is, once again, a little bit more news, but I did want to touch on it because it is a big name. Eric Decker has a sore shoulder. Something to be aware of, once again, the Jets seem to be getting beat up. The receivers are getting beat up, even though they're not getting touches, yet the running back who's touching the ball like every snap is not getting injured, which kind of shocks me. Yeah. But this is one thing I'd be aware of. I wouldn't do too much with regards to if Eric Decker is someone that you drafted as a starter and you went more running back heavy, you still got to play him because he's still a very, very viable option in the Jets offense. who's been scoring a lot of points. He got the touchdown this last week. It's something to really be aware of and really leave him there. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
concerned about it.
Decker's at like 16, 20 games in a row where he's had either 70 yards or a touchdown.
Yep. He's
So-
Mr. Consistency, in my opinion.
Mr.
So you
Consistency.
still got to keep him there until the injury gets worse. You got to
Yeah, Decker probably is not gonna blow up your stat sheet. However, last year he finished with 12 touchdowns. He had one touchdown. He didn't have a single game with two touchdowns in a game. But he had 12 touchdowns on the season, so 12 different games in which he had a touchdown. The other 4 games he had at least 70 yards. He's probably not going to blow up your stat sheet, but he's a smooth wide receiver too for you. Period.
Okay, so that wraps up our Infirmary Ward docket. Before we get
So
that
many
was-
injuries.
I really hope that that's not going to be a habit within the NFL. They do play a very brutal game. But one part of the Infirmary Award I want to highlight because I drafted this individual, and this is a bit of good news with regards to injuries. Jamal Charles should be back. Thank you. There's a lot of talk about Andy Reid being very, very vague about his involvement going forward, but an article was released today that basically said Andy Reid said he expects Jamal Charles to be almost the exact same back he was last year before the injury. Whether or not he gets the same amount of touches will still yet to be seen. Ware did not have a great game. West did not have a great game. I think this first week will be more of a committee, and then I think you'll see Jamal Charles emerge as he should out of this. So that's a bit of good news for those of you who are Jamal Charles draftees. And so now that we'll get into, before getting into kind of our waiver pickups of the week, which we'll need to touch on pretty quickly before we run too long, we do want to highlight our sponsor for the show. So Ryan, tell us a little bit more about Vox DFS.
All right, Vox DFS. It's our sponsor of the show. They're a premium DFS fantasy daily site. Consultant service. They help you develop your daily fantasy lines for any sport, any platform. They've got guys doing, again, they've got constant pools going on, PGA, NASCAR. We're really getting into football. Want to give a big shout out to Terrence tonight. One of his lines that he wrote up and played that a couple other people played off of as well. Terrence won $500 for himself tonight. He had a couple other people that he used his line for the primetime game. So it's a Sunday night. So it's 2 games, Sunday night and Monday night. His primetime slate won him $500, won a couple other people $700. So I want to say congratulations to Terrence. These guys, absolute. There is a reason they call them fire lines. These guys put up great lineups. So yeah, get involved. Get on to voxdfs.com, voksdfs.com. Sign with them. Tell them that you heard about them from the Skull King podcast, and we'll see what we can do to get you on there so that you can get some help with your DFS lineups and win you some money on whether it be FanDuel, DraftKings, Fantasy Aces, whatever it is. So, all right.
Okay, so moving on to I want to cover. We'll go tight ends first with regards to individuals to pick up. I really like Tammy, tight end from Atlanta. I know that there's people who believe that the backup tight end, I think Hooper will, over the process of the season, take more touches away from Tammy. But right now, Tammy is involved more consistently than Mohamed Sanu, who's the number 2 receiver. If you have Sanu and you fell for his week 1 production, I still believe that he is a valuable asset. I just don't think he's really startable until he has a little bit more consistency under his belt. I think Tammy is someone who is owned in less than 50% of Yahoo leagues. He's someone in, I think it's something like 34%. So it's not very high. So he should be available in almost every league out there. He's my tight end pickup of this week. Once again, we really only do about one. Do you have a tight end that you like other than Tammy?
Yeah, for me it's the outlaw. Jesse James has shown some consistent production over these first couple weeks. A lot of that's with Le'Veon out, but even with them just feeding the ball to D'Angelo Williams, Jesse James has been productive these last 2 weeks. I want to say week 1 he had 4 or 5 catches for about 50 yards or so. This last week 3 catches, 34 yards and a TD. So he's gotten you 9 to 10 points. He's not going to blow you out of the water with this score. It may come here and there, but he's not. At this point he's not going to kill you if you stream tight ends. So he's especially if you can find a team, a defense that's struggling against tight ends, he's a worthy pickup for you.
Moving on into the running back position, I have 2 that I want to highlight. There's obviously a few more that I think are worth picking up, but the 2 I want to highlight. Number 1, for those of you who had Amir Abdullah, you should be on the lookout for Dwayne Washington.
Yep.
He's a beast. He's been used already, so you get a little bit of an idea of what he is as a running back. He's going to be more involved now with Amir Abdullah down. He's a beast.
We don't know exactly how long Amir Abdullah is out. We don't know this as of this point, as the point of this recording. We don't know how severe his injury is. But if it goes to see that Amir is going to be out for a while, Dwayne Washington has definitely got to be picking up.
Yeah, as someone who was a big fan of Dwayne Washington in college, he is a very dynamic runner. The only thing, and this has to do more with his college days, he had an issue with hanging onto the ball, had some fumble problems in college, which is why I think his draft stock dropped dramatically before coming in. But he's a dynamic runner. He's built like a brick house. He took
6'1",
over
233.
He took over the center role. I don't see Riddick taking over the rushing yards. Riddick's still going to be used in the passing downs. I think Dwayne Washington will take a few catches away just because of kind of directly filling in where Amir Abdullah is. I'm not predicting he will have the same production, but if you lost Amir Abdullah, you have to go for Dwayne Washington.
Yeah, Riddick is going to get. I mean, Riddick should be off the table in most leagues at this point.
Yeah,
I don't. He's
after his week 1. Yeah, he should be gone.
Yeah, after his week 1. Now he stumbled a bit week 2. Again, I think looking at that Detroit game, Detroit had 17 penalties in that game. You are not going to get into a rhythm on offense or defense with 17 penalties. So,
no.
That caused some issues for Matthew Stafford. It caused some issues for Theo Riddick getting involved. So with Amir Abdullah out, look for Dwayne Washington to pick up some of those carries. Theo Riddick is going to get a couple more carries, but he's still mainly going to be used in the passing game. So Dwayne Washington's going to be like more of that red zone kind of a guy. So
yeah, give me another one of your running backs that you think should be picked up this week.
Okay, so this is kind of a two-headed monster in this one. With Adrian Peterson going out, we don't know if he's going to play yet. I'm sure he thinks that he can play on a torn meniscus. If we're waiting to see if he chooses to get it repaired, how much he wants to get repaired. If he only gets a partial and he's out for 4 weeks and he comes back, he could just absolutely just tear the whole thing up again.
His knee?
Rip up his knee all over again, and his career could be over. So here's the deal: Jerick McKinnon is the guy to look at in PPR leagues. I think we mentioned this at the top of the show, where he's going to be the guy to get a lot of the work up to the red zone. And in standard leagues, Matt Asiata, again, he finishes like a top 15 running back in 2014 because of the vulturing TDs that he got. He didn't get a whole lot of work. I think his yards per carry was right around 3. It was not very good, but he was scoring touchdowns because Minnesota could get to the red zone. And so I think McKinnon could break into that role. I think I saw Minnesota's plan to split is 65-35 in terms of carries. Problem is most of these Giada's carries are going to come, again, in the red zone and scoring opportunities. So, I like Jerick McKinnon. I've drafted him in a couple of leagues. I have him sitting on the bench right now, waiting to see if he's, how that's going to look. But I like McKinnon for PPR. He's only owned in 24% of leagues as of right now. But Giada, if you have a fab and you want to save a little bit of money, Giada is probably the way to go. So.
The next one I want to highlight is Bilal Powell, more because there's no way that they can continue to run Forte into the ground like they're currently doing. One, his age. Two, his touches are insane, and there's not a single player in the league that can sustain that for an entire year. My belief is Bilal Powell will get more involved. He's going to be more involved in the offense. He may even start to kind of snipe those goal line touches away. If you have Forte, you need to have Bilal Powell. If you have some running back depth and want to pick up someone you believe will begin to be more of an option later down the road, that's why I think Bilal Powell should be someone that should be picked up. He should be owned in every league, just because Forte, that can't be sustained. It just can't be. And not that you project injuries. I'm not saying that you should do that, but Bilal Powell, because of how banged up the Jets offense is, even though they're being very, very successful right now, Bilal Powell is going to get some work in.
Yeah, well, going by the zero running back strategy, I project injuries.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Here's the deal.
You project someone will get injured. You don't project who will get injured.
I try to project a little bit who will get injured, and I still think Forte is one of those guys. Now he may prove me wrong. I don't think he can hold up. He may prove me wrong, but I see Bilal Powell getting involved because I don't think Forte can hold up under 30. If he's getting 30 plus touches a game, even D'Angelo was getting that last year after Le'Veon went out and he broke down too. So they had to go with Toussaint for like the last couple of games into the playoffs because of D'Angelo not being able to play. So.
Yeah. So, do you have another running back that you want to cover, or?
No, I think that was it for me. Those are the main ones for me.
One thing I want to say before we get off the running backs, I have a waiver you should not pick up, and that's Chris Johnson. Please do not be fooled by his 11 points in Yahoo and his touchdown. He did that all in garbage time when David Johnson wasn't even sniffing the field. When the game is on the line, when it's close, David Johnson is the 3-down back. He will be involved in all passing downs in all situations because he's the most dynamic. He's one of the most dynamic running backs in the league, and he's a 3-down back. Chris Johnson was only productive because they were destroying the other team.
Yeah. So
which
I
probably
agree.
Won't happen every week.
Leave him alone. He's more of an option if Johnson if the productive Johnson gets injured.
Yeah. So really quick, I want to get through our wide receivers. Try and keep the show keep it from going too long. One of the probably the top wide receiver that I think people should be going after is Enunwa. Jets have been running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. He's been getting a lot of production. And Enunwa has outscored Marshall in week 1 and has been getting a lot of touches. And now with Decker getting banged up, Enunwa got banged up a little bit, and now with Marshall with the knee, I think Enunwa will still get production. And if Decker or Marshall go down, Enunwa is a perfect fill-in because he's already getting production and he's already getting value. I think he will be the number 1 wide receiver taken up. So if you have kind of a high waiver wire pick or you want to burn a little bit of fab in order to get him, I highly suggest that.
Yeah, I like Enunwa. He really looks good. He's a big body guy, just like Marshall. So he's
one of the things, he's also only owned in 10% of Yahoo leagues.
except he's owned in every single league that I play in. So
you play with smart people.
I play with a lot of guys that really push the limits when it comes to how they play. So yeah, and I think Anunua might be available in one or two. He might be available in one league.
Yeah.
The main I've got two that you should look at. One of them is not going to be available much longer. Tyrell Williams had a phenomenal game this past week against Jacksonville. What was it? It was he only had 3 receptions for 61 yards, but he had a receiving TD, a long receiving TD. He's a big body. He's a big body guy, 6'2", 6'3", kind of in that same mold as Keenan Allen was in terms of body shape, body type. The difference is Williams can run a 4.43 40, so he's got the speed to go to the top. So he may be more of that Michael Floyd type of role, while Travis Benjamin runs more of the underneath routes. So yeah, Tyrell Williams only owned in 49%. That's not going to last much longer.
Yeah, one of the things also is they were playing the meager Jaguars' horrid defense. So I think that helped boost a little bit. But once again, with Woodhead going down, there's less and less options there for Phillip Rivers. So that should kind of balance out the fact that they played a horrible defense. He will be productive moving forward.
Even in week 1, after Keenan Allen went down, he had 2 receptions, but for 71 yards.
Yeah.
So I think he may be the deep threat like Michael Floyd was, because Floyd was he wasn't as fast in his last couple of years, but he could still run a 4.5, 4.6, and was a big body. He was like 6'6", long, lanky body who could come down with the deep ball. So,
yeah, my next one to own would be Philip Dorsett. With Moncrief going down, Dorsett's owned in 42% of Yahoo leagues, and so he is owned in most leagues. I know he's owned in a couple of my leagues because a lot of people didn't. Once the injuries started coming in, a lot of people grabbed Dorsett. I know he was drafted in most leagues because of his production last year. And I believe with Moncrief out, he's a perfect candidate to step in and not lose any production for Andrew Luck moving forward. He should be someone that you should definitely be keeping your eye on, especially if you had a receiver that got banged up this week.
Yeah, I agree. Forsett's a good pickup. He's, if Moncrief is going to be out very long, Dorsett becomes that number two wide receiver option. For my second wide receivers, Victor Cruz, they're running a ton of 3 wide receiver sets in New York. All 3 wide receivers are getting some play. Not as much for OBJ as I was expecting, which has hurt me in one of my leagues. But they'll get it. I think they'll get it figured out. Eli tends to be a little bit of a slow starter as well. So, Victor Cruz, he is proving that he is healthy, that he can get the job done. I think he's a good wide receiver 3 flex option for you going forward, and he's only owned in 37% of leagues. So,
one thing to also note, he's also going up against Washington, who has not done well defensively. They've given up the 4th most fantasy points to receivers so far this season, after playing Dallas, who did not throw the ball a lot, and New Orleans. The Giants played Dallas, New Orleans, and got some yards. Washington, obviously playing the Steelers, gave up a ton of yards.
Yeah.
And so I don't see Washington slowing down the Giants production-wise, maybe not getting a lot of scoring, but you will see all 3 receivers getting some solid numbers. So
yeah, they will all be involved.
And so that, I believe, is our show, unless, Ryan, you have another object that you want to touch on.
Real quick, just with how horrible the Cleveland defense is, a possible streaming option would be Ryan Tannehill. While he wasn't great in the New England game, he did throw for a couple touchdowns. I think he threw a couple TDs, but he did throw for a couple touchdowns and 300+ yards. So I think against the crappy Cleveland defense, he could have a very productive game.
Well, that also factor in that it doesn't look like the Browns' offense is going to be moving the ball at all.
No.
He may get a lot of good starting position.
Yeah, he may have some decent starting position.
And so with that, thank you for joining us for the Week 2 wrap-up. Going into Week 3, touching the injuries in our Infirmary Ward show. We really hope the next week when we kind of do our Week 3 wrap-up that we don't have nearly as much injuries to go over and really focus more on waiver wire pickups. But once again, you've been listening to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by Vox DFS Firelines at voxdfs.com. My name is Justin.
And I'm Ryan.
See you next time.
All right, talk to you later, guys.